Hello and welcome everybody to the Harbor Commission October 2025 regular meeting. Calling to order this meeting at 6:31 p.m. I'm Adam Stanwyk, Chair, and let's start off with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Cohen?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson? Here. Commissioner Stedman?
Here.
Chair Stanwyk?
Here.
And Commissioners McCray and Anderson are absent.
Great, thank you. Yes, and as 4 out of the 7, we have a quorum, so we can have this meeting moving forward. And Director Wiltshire, do we have any changes to the agenda this evening?
Chair Stanwyk, no changes.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lopez, do we have any general public comment?
There are no, no hands raised and no speaker slips submitted, Chair Stanwyk.
Great, thank you. And just to make note, there was no written public comment as well that was submitted in advance of the meeting either. Moving on to work group reports. I believe we have 3 work groups. We are talking about the strategic planning one today as part of one of the agenda meetings, agenda items. But is there any member of the commission who would like to speak on behalf of any of the work groups? Oh, Commissioner Stedman?
Yes, the strategic work group met on October 9th with Commissioner Nelson and Director Wiltshire present. And we strongly recommend, in accordance with new business item number 3, that there's a compelling need for stakeholder engagement to mirror the city's day-long meetings. For example, the upcoming one on October 20th, also with community members, and to conduct a comprehensive market and revenue analysis. We also further strongly recommend an agreement by the Commission to dig in very soon on a comprehensive review and updating of our lease policy. Is that about right, Commissioner Nelson?
Works for me.
Okay.
Great, thank you guys. Anybody else like to speak on behalf of one of the work groups tonight? All right, we can move on then to the consent calendar. Item number 1, approval of the minutes. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for us for item number 1?
Yes, this is item 1, recommendation that Harbor Commission waive further reading and approve the minutes from the regular meeting of September 18th, 2025.
Great, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve item number 1?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Lopez, can you please give us a vote, please?
Yes, this is a motion by Commissioner Nelson, seconded by Commissioner Stedman to approve the consent calendar. Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman?
Yes.
Chair Stanwyk?
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Anderson and McCray absent.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. Item number 2, the renewal of Conway Vineyards Incorporated lease agreement. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for item number 2 of new business for us?
Yes, this is item 2, recommendation that Harbor Commission recommends staff negotiate a 5-year lease agreement with Conway Vineyards, Inc. for 1,942 square feet of space located at 217G Stearns Wharf.
Thank you. Okay, turning over to the waterfront for the presentation on item number 2 of new business. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and apologies for the technical difficulty there. Good evening, Chair Stanwyk, commissioners, members of the public. My name is Cesar Barrios. I am the Waterfront Business Manager, and today I bring to you a request from staff to negotiate and renew a 5-year lease agreement with Conway Vineyards Incorporated. We'll begin with a brief background. So Conway Vineyards Incorporated has been doing business as Deep Sea Conway Family Wines and has leased space on Stearns Wharf since October 2010. Their lease space totals approximately 1,000 2,942 square feet, including 442 square feet of exterior deck space, which is also for public use. And I'll have a photo here coming up to show you. In April 2018, the Conway family amended their lease to acquire an additional 618 square feet of floor space available from the property next door. So basically, there was a business that gave up their lease, and they acquired it through a lease assignment. And since then, they've used this area as primarily as retail space, which is what it's zoned for. So they're not able to serve wine at this location, but they use it to sell wine, merchandise, and accessories related to wine and the wharf in general. In addition, the advantage of having this space, it provides a more frontage access to the wine tasting room area, which is on the east half of the wharf. So by having the retail space, they have this frontage space so the public can see and come up and go through that space into the wine shop. So it's been very beneficial since they took over that spot. Also, the current lease is set to expire November 30th of this year, the reason I'm here today. And one thing to point out that's very important, the Conway Vineyards, they're a tenant in really good standing. They have no outstanding defaults on file, and they've been prompt with their rent payments. And also, they've really improved the space since they acquired the lease back in 2010. They redid the interior, and they've done a lot of work in the inside to maximize the use and make it a very attractive space for all of our visitors. So for the proposed lease terms, so this is what we're looking at propose to bring up to the Conways. It's basically it'll be a 5-year term. In the past, it had a longer term, so now we're trying to adjust to the current market and how these leases are being drafted, and we're doing shorter leases. That gives the city, the waterfront, an opportunity to have a shorter term and reevaluate these businesses, and also gives the business an opportunity to make any changes if they wish to do so within a shorter period of time instead of having this lengthy over 10-year leases. The base rent is to be determined, but the goal is for it to be a market rate. And standard method for us is to increase the rent annually based on the CPI and the Consumer Price Index. The percentage rent, just as it is currently and very common with a lot of businesses, is 10% of gross receipts. As mentioned, the site is 1,142 square feet, and the standard required insurance for general liability at $2 million. And so the site's located at 217 Stearns Wharf. And if you can see in this slide right here, this is one of their main entrances on the wine tasting room side on the second floor. For folks that require ADA access, there's accommodations provided at the base of the steps, so that is an accommodation that's part of their lease agreement and also their operations to ensure that we're in compliance. And also I've included a photo of their deck space, which is one of the most attractive locations on the wharf. So today I bring to you a recommendation from staff to negotiate a 5-year lease agreement with the Conway Vineyards Incorporated for the 1,150 square feet space up on the wharf. And that concludes my brief presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Barrios. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Cohen?
Thank you. Thank you. Just 2 questions. One is, what for 2025 or for their previous lease, do we know how much about, on average, they were paying per month?
Chair Stanwyck, Commissioner Cohen, yes, we do. It's around $11,000 per month as base rent.
Okay. And then my other question is, because I know with some of the other tenants that are on percentage rents, I know we always have the base rent and then we have the percentage, but it seems like there's a lot of fluctuation and it gets hard when we're in budget meetings to like kind of gauge what we're going to be able to count on for any given time. And I'm just wondering if there has been a consideration to move away from the percentage model and to just something that's more sustainable for us, that's more stable, that we can just count on every month. This is what the rent is, and go from there.
Commissioner Cohen, yeah, we have looked into that since last year. We've met with local and regional firms that handle leases, trying to get feedback and to kind of have an idea how we're doing in comparison. Yeah, so there is, it has been very standard for the Waterfront Department and the city to have these types of percentage requirements for percentage rent. But there is room to make adjustments depending on what leasing principle we want to adopt overall. I mean, we're in the process of revamping our leasing policy. So there's definitely something to look into. But currently, the structure that you see here, it's this structure that we're using not just here at the waterfront, but also with other city properties, for example, at the airport and Parks and
Sure.
Rec as well.
Okay. I mean, I would,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then just to add on to that, it really is only for food service and retail type tenants that are percentage rent, and it's advantageous for both parties. You look at somebody like one of our high grossing restaurant tenants, if we were to try and charge a base rent at that value and the restaurant wasn't succeeding, it would just almost sink them immediately, and it wouldn't allow us to capitalize on that upside when they are doing well. And so it would be almost kind of tough on both ends, and so that percentage rent model works really well to share when they're doing well, and then that low base rent covers you when they're doing poorly to ensure that we get some base revenue. But there's no way we could get away with charging a base revenue high enough to receive enough revenue as some of our higher grossing restaurant tenants bring in.
okay, yeah, I could see that. I just, like I say, when we're in these budget meetings and we just don't know what we can count on, if there was a way to move to something a little bit more stable with the tenants that maybe fit into the other group.
And that's what the base rent's intended to do. We can count on that, and then sort of everything above that, once they're in percentage rent, is sort of additional above and beyond. And so we could look into setting those base rents at a level that we're comfortable with that amount of revenue, but the problem with that is that it might be too high. You almost have to incentivize or push restaurants to succeed into that percentage rent so that we can share in that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Nelson?
An observation and as well as a question. I really appreciate you doing this. This is a new lease. This is not a renewal. This is a new lease. And you've made a decision to do it for 5 years as opposed to, say, 10 with 2 renewable options. I really appreciate that approach, and I think it will help as we delve into the leasing policy, the citywide leasing policy. Second, and I'm all for this lease, I'm aware that in the county, in the wine area up in Santa Ynez, that tasting rooms are very controversial. And it's a tug of war between are they food and beverage services, and the county goes through a real a process of regulating tasting rooms because they can easily become restaurants. I'm assuming our arrangement with them has nothing to do with the county's program and how they regulate vineyards, and we deal with these folks just the way we would any of our food and beverage tenants.
Commissioner Nelson, that is correct.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, yeah, in regards to this, just want to say that I think that the Wharf having a winery is a good idea. I like having that as a visitor serving, especially with the Funkstone is the only winery on the Wharf. Also, to just echoing on Commissioner Nelson's point, the 5-year leases. I think that seeing that there is really no it's 100% occupancy all the time for all the tenants, and there's a lot of tenants who would want that real estate. So I think negotiating just from the position of power in this sense, I mean, I think a 5-year lease makes a lot of sense with this going forward, so I like that idea as well. With that, I don't see any other questions. Is there any general public comment on this, Mr. Lopez?
No, Chair Stanwyck.
Okay, with no public comment, no other questions, a motion would be ordered at this time for the recommendation that Harbor Commission recommend the staff negotiate the 5-year lease agreement with Conway Vineyards for 1,942 square feet of space located at 217G Stearns Wharf.
So moved.
We have a motion and we have a second. Mr. Lopez, can you please do a vote for us on item number 2 of new business?
Yes, and this is a motion by Commissioner Cohen, seconded by Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman.
Yes.
Chair Stanwyck.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Anderson and McCray absent.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 3 of new business, the Waterfront Strategic Planning discussion with a focus on revenue opportunities, analysis, and creation of a standardized leasing policy. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for item number 3 for us?
Yes, this is item 3, recommendation that Harbor Commission discuss the strategic planning efforts to date and recommend staff continue working with the strategic planning work group and various stakeholders to complete a revenue opportunities analysis and develop citywide standard leasing guidelines.
Thank you. All right, turning over to the Waterfront.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mike Wiltshire, Waterfront Director. This will be relatively brief, but would like to give an update on strategic planning and where we've come to date. So we've been discussing strategic planning with the Harbor Commission over the last year and a half or so. Here's on the screen right now a reminder of our timeline. And so the Harbor Commission voted to form a strategic planning work group in January of 2024. We discussed strategic planning at a number of Harbor Commission meetings, October, April, May, August, and today. And so at the April meeting, the Harbor Commission voted to extend the strategic planning process, focus on leasing guidelines, and extend the strategic planning work group. So that was something that we're building on right now. Next slide. Just to cover some of the outcomes that have come about to date. So initially, we created a waterfront policy dashboard at the request of the Harbor Commission. I believe those are on your desk now. And the intent there was for Harbor Commission and the public and staff to use those essentially as a quick reference guide for key policies, processes, and data. We also conducted a waterfront community survey. So this was completed in June 2025, gathered input from the public, mainly on how well we were balancing our ocean-dependent, ocean-related and visitor-serving services. So a lot of great data in there, had over 500 respondents. I thought it was really, really informative. Overall, the respondents showed broad support for the current mix of services. And the majority of the respondents felt we do a good job of keeping Santa Barbara a working harbor. So that was refreshing to see. The survey data has been informative to staff. We've been working through it since June. So since then to date, I've been personally reaching out to all those that have submitted comments provided their contact information. So this has led to some really good conversations, some quick wins with maintenance, some kind of decisions going forward. And so just really good material to kind of have in our back pocket as we're going to keep going with this strategic planning. And thirdly, we're also keeping tabs on the city's strategic planning process. So city administration is working with a consultant to lead their strategic planning process. To date, there have been several meetings with city council, staff, various stakeholders. Coming up on October 20th, so first thing next week at 1 p.m., city council will be holding an open public meeting to review their strategic planning priorities. The hope with the waterfront is for myself, staff, Harbor Commission, all those involved to pay attention to this, to really align our priorities with where city councils are. And so I'm waiting until this October 20th meeting, and then we can hopefully roll in what we're doing under that overarching city council priority umbrella. Next slide. So some of our recommended next steps. So as Commissioner Stedman mentioned, we met recently with the strategic planning work group and staff. and really came up with a couple key areas of focus that we can work on. The strategic planning work group realized and recommended that we should focus on fiscal sustainability. So given the current pressures on the waterfront as an enterprise fund, what this could look like is we're recommending that we continue working with the strategic planning work group on a revenue opportunity analysis. So really just kind of looking at the breadth of options that we could have to generate more revenue for the waterfront. The idea would be sort of brainstorming up front, no bad ideas, get them all out there, and then we could revisit those at a future Harbor Commission meeting, ideally in time for our next budget cycle, so that if anything rises to the surface, we can roll it into our next budget cycle if we want to implement these revenue strategies. So the second task, as Commissioner Stedman mentioned as well, is to really look into our leasing guidelines. And so some of the questions that came up on this lease we just reviewed now, those kind of questions could be built into some standardized guidelines that really dictate how we solicit, how we manage, and how we set terms for different tenant types. There isn't anything like that specifically in place right now, but utilizing the Harbor Commission and staff and stakeholders to help us kind of create those guidelines so that when we come to a renewal, there'll be key trigger points, there'll be metrics that have to be met, it'll better define what a tenant in good standing is, and we'll use these guidelines to inform us and set up our leases going forward. So the intent is that the revenue analysis be completed first. That could probably be done fairly quickly. We could potentially bring something back to the Harbor Commission in November if the strategic planning work group can meet between now and then, at least to get something out there. Once we kind of see that process through, then staff and the work group and stakeholders can kind of start the process of looking into standardized leasing guidelines and run that through the broader city staff, Harbor Commission, City Council as well. So these two efforts would really be kind of two palatable, viable, excellent outcomes of the strategic planning work group, and I think we can kind of work on those in the coming months. So that would be staff's recommendation to essentially make a motion to not only work on these two items, but also extend the strategic planning work group with the specific tasks of working on a revenue analysis, as well as creating standardized leasing guidelines. Next slide. And now just for a little snippet of what a revenue analysis might look at. So conveniently, this city administration is also going through this with every city department. So over the last few weeks, every city department was asked to essentially come up with a laundry list of revenue generating opportunities. It works well with our timing because we're kind of right there as well. And so this was a list that was put together by waterfront staff over the last few weeks to provide to city administration. Again, purely theoretical. The idea is to kind of brainstorm ideas, revenue possibilities on where revenues can come from. If some of these stand out or are of interest, we can kind of dig deeper into them. The way we have them broken down is this is kind of a table of tier 1 revenue opportunities that are either high dollar revenue, easy to implement, or reasonably viable. We also have a list of tier 2 options, which are lower revenue options, not as easy to implement, may have more roadblocks or harder to pursue. So ideally, we could get with the strategic planning work group over the coming weeks, grind through these a little bit, maybe come up with some more ideas, canvass some stakeholders, and really refine this list and bring it back to the Harbor Commission in November, and then also work with it with the budget work group and with Harbor Commission going forward through more of a budgetary lens. So some of these standout revenue opportunities include obviously increasing slip fees to market rate. So there are a lot of issues with the current economics with slip fees and private purchasing and transfer fees. One method to sort of clean some of this up and to dampen that private to private market and would be to increase our monthly slip fees over time. What that would do is essentially kind of lower the transfer fee process and recapture that revenue with monthly. So it really comes down to somebody's what they're willing to pay for a slip, and what they're willing to pay today includes a very high private-to-private transfer, our transfer fee, and month-to-month fees. So if you shift the balance of that willingness to pay more towards the monthly fees, then we recoup more of that revenue, and it is probably economically a cleaner way to kind of manage the harbor. Agreed that would have to be something that would happen over a long swath of time to give people the time to make business decisions on their own if they want to divest themselves of a slip, change what they do, but it is a possibility. Parking rates, giant revenue source of ours. We do try and provide affordable parking as best we can. If we increase our parking rates, would demand go down? I highly doubt it, but we still want to try and kind of keep those rates in check and make our coast and resources accessible. There still is always the option of the annual parking permit, which is a fantastic deal. The reality is that our hourly rates do disproportionately hit visitors and out-of-towners, and so that can be thought up in the mix as well, but something that we can look at. Some of the more controversial ones, so installing RV sites in waterfront parking lots. A lot of our neighboring harbors do this. They generate a lot of revenue. It does check the boxes for improving coastal access. You know, State Lands Commission, Coastal Commission, they're very into this sort of thing. Our community, maybe not so much, but it's worth looking at when it's something that could generate $250,000, $500,000 a year if you convert some of our parking spaces to RV sites. And then some other ones, promoting West Beach for larger events, music festivals, that sort of thing. There is interest in that from the industry, so it would really just be safety, security concerns, all that sort of thing, but using the resources we have to generate more revenue. Next slide. And then here's an additional list of sort of tier 2 revenue ideas, a lot smaller in scale. Things like increasing parking violation fees, reviewing our custodial and landscape contracts for efficiencies, providing bill-back maintenance services to our tenants. So I thought that was a pretty great idea from our facilities group. So we have a number of tenants who maintain their buildings. We have maintenance workers. If we could provide, essentially act as contract laborers for our tenants. So really the ask to Harbor Commission tonight is not to dive too much into these revenue measures, just wanted to kind of give an idea of what the next step could look like, but really to recommend that staff and the strategic planning work group continue to work on this. So we could possibly have a more refined list back at our November meeting. The intent, in a perfect world, we could have some ideas that were kind of palatable and acceptable to the Harbor Commission that we could roll into our next year's budget process. So with that, next slide. Yeah, I'll just put our original recommendation up and I'll turn it back to the commission for discussion.
Great, thank you, Director Wiltshire. Do we have any questions from the commission? Commissioner Nelson?
Oh, I would like to kind of more of a statement than anything else. That this may not look like a typical strategic plan, but these elements are so fundamental to strategic planning. I'm really excited to see them. The leasing policy, I personally have had problems when we were asked to renew a lease because there's no real strategic direction whether we should enter into a new lease agreement, get an RFP. Well, one of the ways to do that is if we go through an exercise like this, we look at the revenue generating opportunities and discuss them with the commission, with the public, with stakeholders, and based on that conversation, we decide what our strategic priorities should be. So, and then when you've got a leasing policy, an improved leasing policy, you can, instead of just renewing the same leases that you've been renewing in 20-year increments for the last 40, 50 years, you don't have to do that anymore. You can basically move in a new direction based on the conversation that occurred by virtue of this. So I'm really supportive of the three things that are laid out here today, and particularly the quality of the items on the tier one revenue sources. They're exactly the kind of things that I believe that we should be looking at, and look forward to working with staff to refine that list and come up with some things. And my final thing, though, however, is when you look at that list, it's exciting, but I'm thinking of it also politically, and I'm thinking about the city council, and I'm hoping that in terms of your interactions with the city council, particularly at this time that they're looking at a strategic plan, that you tell them, this is what we're doing, and there's going to be a lot of happy people, and there's going to be a lot of unhappy people, and you should, recognize that now before we pull the trigger and go forward. So anyway, I'm completely supportive of what's in front of us and the recommendation, so thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Nelson. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, just wanted to highlight then just some of the accomplishments of this. Kudos to the Waterfront and the work group for putting this together. I think the dashboard has been really helpful, at least for me, trying to navigate everything. And I think particularly when we have a new commissioner on board, this will be very helpful to them and any new commissioner going forward, just to provide clarity and direction on the scope of what we do in the Harbor Commission. So thank you guys again for doing that. Also, too, thanks again for doing the waterfront survey. I think that's important because it's not just the commission or the waterfront, but all the stakeholders involved. I think that really helped us just to generate some ideas, give us some direction. So I think that was great. Also, too, regarding the revenue opportunities, really looking forward to seeing what comes out of this with the work group, because this isn't, as we saw, just about fee increases. It's really about using the resources we have at the waterfront really to maximize the potential. And we don't want to waste that. So I think some of those are really good ideas, and kind of looking forward to what the subgroup is going to come back with us on. With that, do we have any public comment regarding this item, Mr. Lopez?
There are no speaker slips submitted and no hands raised, Chair Stanwyck.
Okay, any other comments from the commission? Okay, can you please read the recommendation for us again, Mr. Lopez, item number 3 of new business?
Yes, recommendation that Harbor Commission discuss the strategic planning efforts to date and recommend staff continue working with the strategic planning work group and various stakeholders to complete a revenue opportunities analysis and develop citywide standard leasing guidelines.
Thank you. Okay, this time a motion will be ordered to move forward with this recommendation.
So move.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to move forward with the recommendation. Mr. Lopez, could we please have a vote on this item number 3 of new business?
Yes, and this is a motion by Commissioner Nelson, seconded by Commissioner Stedman. Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stedman?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
And Chair Stanwyck.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Anderson and McCray absent.
Thank you. Okay, moving on now to administrative actions. Number 4, the election of Harbor Commission Vice Chairperson. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for us?
Yes, this is item 4, recommendation that Harbor Commission nominate and elect the Harbor Commission Vice Chairperson for the remainder of fiscal year 2026 per the City Charter, Section 804.
Thank you. Okay, so with this, usually this is something we do in the summertime, but thank you to former Vice Chair Kate Ford, who recently resigned to take a county planning commissioner job. So we have the term opened. This will actually be an abridged term, so it'll be probably for the next 5 or 6 meetings with this. So as I said, we were going to revote again in July or August on this. But going forward for the recommendation, I would like to nominate John Stedman for Vice Chair for the remainder term. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second. Do we have any other nominations for the abridged vice chair term going forward? Okay, with that, we have a quorum to vote on this. And Mr. Lopez, can you please do a vote for us?
Yes, and this is a motion by Chair Stanwyck, seconded by Commissioner Nelson to designate Chair Stedman as the Vice Chair. Commissioner Nelson?
Aye.
Commissioner Stedman?
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen?
Aye.
Chair Stanwyck.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Anderson and McCray absent.
Great, thank you. And congrats to Vice Chair Stedman. Thank you. Okay, moving on to administrative action number 5, the Harbor Commission ad hoc work group assignments. Mr. Lopez, can you please read the recommendation for us?
Yes, this is item 5, recommendation the Harbor Commission discuss and take action to reorganize, create, and/or dissolve existing ad hoc work groups and assign commissioner roles as needed.
Thank you. And with this, again, this is a item that we revisit periodically throughout the year. Due to one of the commissioners resigning, we figured that we would take this opportunity to revisit some of the work groups. Unfortunately, we only have 4 members here, but just to kind of keep in mind that usually in February, we'll also have this. And additionally, in February, likely we'll be creating the budget work group as well during this time. But for now, we just wanted to open up the opportunity if we want to do any additions or changes to the 3 work groups that we have right now. Also, too, does the Waterfront have any input on this as well?
Yeah, just to confirm, we'll redo this in February as well if we do have new harbor commissioners. So this was really just to cover us for now. And then Chair Stanwyck, I'd like to make a recommendation to formally continue the strategic planning work group as a part of this item, just so that it's on record.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have the current work group assignments up there. Only 3 work groups we have currently. Any questions or comments from the commission on this item?
I most certainly do.
Commissioner Nelson?
I think the big vacancy I see is on the strategic planning work group. And I'm hoping that I don't see, and when they're not here, when a commissioner's not here, that means they're fair game.
Yeah.
So I am thinking that, well, there's only one other person who has has a restaurant business and understands the kind of things we're going to be talking about. And what do you think about Seth as a possible add to the strategic work group?
I think given his absence, we should volunteer him.
Yeah, I agree. I would love to have Seth on it, but just due to him not being here, I would hate to put him on something. But good idea. Yeah. I think when we revisit in February, I think it's a good argument to be made.
That's fine.
Yep. No, thanks for that. Commissioner Cohn?
I was going to say that I think that it makes sense to have the chair on the strategic planning committee, because you are the chair, so you're setting the agenda, you're the one who's most involved with staff, you know the needs. I've always thought that that is a natural, fit, which is actually when Commissioner Stedman originally was on the committee, he was the chair, and I think that, that was part of the thinking at the time. So I would really encourage you to think about serving in that role.
No, thanks for that. I appreciate that. And although I agree that that would make sense. I just, at this point, I feel like I can't devote 100% to that right now. I'll think about that, and in February, when we revisit this, I'll consider it. But I appreciate that, Commissioner Cohn. Any other comments from the commission on this?
Is there no longer a budget committee?
Commissioner Cohen, we, through practice, we will dissolve that every year once it's done and redevelop it. So this would be a time where we could redevelop it as we're coming into the budget cycle. And so we kind of wanted to create that on an as-needed basis.
When does the budget cycle start?
We'd likely start meeting with the budget work group in January or February, if there were a work group.
Would it make sense to form one right now?
Yeah, that'd be totally acceptable.
Okay. I think we
Sure.
should.
Sure. For the budget work group, would we have at least 3 people that would like to serve on the budget? I know I have served in the past and would be happy to serve again on the budget work group. If we have another, we would need at least another one person on there.
I would serve again.
Commissioner Cohen, great. I know Commissioner Anderson in the past has served. We'll hold off on that for now. We'd always kind of add him later on. Also, too, he can attend because it wouldn't be a quorum if we were to meet anyway, so that would be fine. So I think for budget work group, I know I see Commissioner Nelson and Commissioner Stearns on all the others, so yeah. I think we're probably good to move forward with myself and Commissioner Cohen, unless you guys think otherwise.
No, I don't.
We could see who's new too. Might
Yep.
be, I mean, I like the idea of having new blood.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so we have created budget work group, which we usually do anyway at the beginning of the year to go through the budget cycle. Myself, as well as Commissioner Cohen on the budget work group, as well as all the other 3 work groups to stay as is for now. Do we have any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, at this time, a motion would be in order to approve this updated work group assignments.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the updated work group assignments going forward. Mr. Lopez, could we please have a vote?
Yes, this is a motion by Commissioner Cohen, seconded by Commissioner Stedman, to maintain status quo for the 3 current work groups and create a budget work group comprising of Chair Stanwyck and Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
Commissioner Stedman.
Aye.
Chair Stanwyck.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Anderson and McCray absent.
All right, thank you. Moving along, that concludes new business. That concludes all the administrative actions for this evening. We can move on to the department update, the director's report, the FEMA storm-related reimbursement update. I hear there's some good news to share.
Thank you, Chair Stanwyck. Yeah, in a current sea of bad financial news and headwinds, we've got some good news to deliver today. So, so as you all probably recall, between 2022 and 2024, there were some pretty historic storms and swell that really impacted the waterfront and the city, for that matter. So up on the screen, the photo on the left is a bit of a reminder. So that's what Harbor West parking lot looked like, completely flooded and covered in sand. The existing kind of ice plant berms are just washed away completely. You can see where the palm tree is on the left. That's kind of the original curb line, and so it really did just turn the entire parking lot into a beach. Floodwaters went right across the entire parking lot into Cabrillo Boulevard. So on the right is a photo showing the damage caused to the yacht club parking lot, boatyard tenant space, and our facilities maintenance yard. So just at a high level, this storm kicked off an enormous amount of work and some pretty costly repairs on the part of the waterfront. Next slide. One of the larger actions and costs was to install a 400-foot rock revetment to protect the Harbor Business District. This was critical as the storm was continuing to erode and wiping out any defenses that we had from high tides and future flooding. So the good news was this revetment followed a previously designed plan, and we were lucky that plan existed, and so this was able to be installed within kind of less than 2 weeks, which was amazing. But it came at a cost, at a little over $1 million out of the waterfront budget. Next slide. So, as you all also know, the waterfront has been working with FEMA and the city to go after reimbursement funding for all of this post-storm work. So the process to go after FEMA funding is long and tedious, and it takes a huge amount of staff time. So all along, it was fairly questionable if we were going to receive any reimbursement or any funding at all for the funds that we had outlaid for repairs. And so the excellent news that came in a couple weeks ago is that we've heard back from FEMA that they're going to be reimbursing roughly $2.2 million worth of the $2.6 million in claims that we submitted. So that is absolutely fantastic. That's really, really good news. It's a huge win for the waterfront. Those costs hit our reserves really, really hard when they happened. We don't have the funding physically in place yet, but we're going to work with our city finance and FEMA to essentially get those funds returned into our waterfront reserves. So, as I mentioned, at a time when we're seeing these huge cost increases, insurance increases, the potential for removal of dredge funding, so this $2.2 million reimbursement will really better us and set us up to be in a better financial position to kind of deal with these headwinds going forward. He's not here tonight, but I do want to give a lot of credit to our facilities manager, Brian Adair. So he put in some seriously long hours working through these FEMA claims. It is a grueling process of back and forth and accounting, and really, if he wasn't as involved as he was, we would not have been able to recoup these funds. So a big kudos to Brian and our city finance staff for kind of putting in the legwork and chasing this down. So with that, that's the end of my update. Just some great news. I know we'd kind of all been waiting on that and questioning it, and it actually honestly came sooner than I thought it would. With that, I'll turn it back to the commission for any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Director Wiltshire. That is great news, especially, from a budget perspective. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Cohen.
Thanks, that is great news. I just wanted to ask, and maybe I missed it, has there been any update on the federal funds for dredging?
No, we're still absolutely status quo on that front.
When does that become more critical?
We have a funding left over. The Army Corps has funding left over from the FY25 cycle. So we do have one dredge cycle left and funded. We're working with the Army Corps, and we'll likely do that in January or February, or essentially kind of wait as long as we can to maximize that one time. So we're good at least until we need to dredge one more time. And then after that, we'll be in a position where we do not have additional funding for a future dredge.
Okay. And then is there any impacts to the harbor related to the government shutdown that we should be aware of?
None in particular at the moment. None that are impacting our waterfront operations. NOAA does have an office, and the Coast Guard does have its operations. I'm unclear on what the Coast Guard's readiness is right now, but I believe that they are essential service and that they're there and available.
Commissioner Nelson?
I'm just curious, where do these funds go? Do they go to our reserve?
Yes, they'll go back into our waterfront reserves.
So in the event that we suddenly had a liability and we now have this deductible, this giant $3 million deductible, obviously that's $2.2 million of that in case we got hit by another big storm.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could happen all over again this year.
Yeah.
And so the
That's
thing
great.
to
That's just
remember
great
is that's hard money. That's money that
Yeah,
we spent
and
last year. And so it's nice to see it as receiving $2.2 million back, but we spent over $2.6
Yep.
million. And
Oh, I know.
so it still cost us $500,000. It is really nice to get that reimbursed, but it's really just filling a gap that those funds that we'd already spent.
Commissioner Stedman?
Yes, thank you. Director Wiltshire, on the matter of dredging and the fact that we do have a Coast Guard vessel docked there, I mean, is it conceivable that the federal government wouldn't dredge if we were in emergency conditions, given that we have that Coast Guard vessel?
It's highly likely that the Army Corps is still obligated to maintain ports and harbors. And so if there is an emergency situation, that's essentially a different pot of money. It's not preemptive maintenance dollars. And so we went through that a couple years ago when the harbor filled in after that storm. That didn't come out of our regular maintenance dredging pool of money. That was an emergency dredge operation. And so in theory, if the harbor were to fill in storm conditions, the Army Corps would be responsive to that and likely be on the hook to dredge it. The difference there is they'll dredge essentially the minimum amount to get passage for that Coast Guard cutter and our operations, as opposed to clearing the channel to its normal width.
Right, that would have been my second question, so thank you. So it would be an emergency dredge, basically.
And last year, that process took them a couple weeks, which in my mind is in pretty short order. There's no guarantee how quickly that process could happen. We don't have a dredge on site in the harbor. So if there's dozens of other harbors in our same situation, in an emergency situation, that time period may get long.
That's certainly one of the most looming threats, I think, to our harbor, unless we want to convert into the Florida Everglades and use flat-bottom boats to get in and out.
I think that we all know what's going on, and the dispersal and allocation of emergency funds has already been politicized. And red states are getting funded for emergencies and blue states aren't. So to assume that we're talking about a normal process on getting emergency funds, I think might be the incorrect way to look at it, because, I mean, that's what's happening as we speak. So to assume that things are going to change might be a mistake.
Thanks. Any other comments from the commission? Okay, thank you for the update, Director Wiltshire. We can move on to item number 7, the Harbor Operations Report.
All right, good evening, Chair Stanwyck, Harbor Commissioners, members of the public. My name is Harbor Operations Manager Nathan Aldridge, and tonight's Harbor Operations Report will feature some additional good news regarding a recent grant award and some information about our upcoming Harbor and Seafood Festival. To begin, uncertainty surrounding our current economic climate has also made its impact felt at the California Department of Boating and Waterways. For some background, the state's Harbor and Watercraft Revolving Fund is responsible for funding the state's Surrendered and Abandoned Vessel Exchange Program, SAVE, or SAFE program. So the bad news is that this year, the state dropped its total grant funding from $2.7 million down to $1 million, which represents a 37% reduction in award money given out. And to the good news, despite the cuts, our waterfront department here in Santa Barbara is pleased to announce receiving a grant award of $78,500, which is an increase from the $65,500 awarded in 2023, which is our last grant cycle. So these funds will immediately be put to use for removal and disposal of abandoned or voluntarily surrendered recreational boats and any associated hazards to navigation. So the funds are drawn from the state's Total Safe program, and they're used to reimburse the city 90% of the total cost of removing and disposing of these vessels, many of which are associated with abandoned winter storms, plus recreational vessels that are voluntarily surrendered to us at the city for disposal. To give you a sort of total picture, this total grant covers approximately half of what our total expenditures were in this last cycle to dispose of these abandoned and surrendered vessels. So if you look up the screen, on that travel lift hoist is a photograph of a recent boat that was surrendered to us and turned in. Our total vessel disposal cost for that last grant term was $135,997. And so Waterfront ended up covering about 70,000 of those. And so this new grant will enable us to continue to hopefully aggressively pursue more of the surrendered vessels, which are much less cost intensive to dispose of than waiting for a boat to sink or to go aground in a winter storm. And second update, we'd love to encourage the public and the Harbor Commission both to come out and celebrate all the fishermen and the bounty of our Santa Barbara Channel this Saturday for our 22nd annual Harbor and Seafood Festival. The event is free, runs from 10 in the morning to 5 at night, and it's timing with the opening of our lobster season. Local specialty booths will include a variety of dishes, including local lobster, barbecued albacore, fish tacos, oysters, mussels, clam chowder, and seafood paella, as well as other great seafood. There'll be some great music once again this year, arts and crafts vendors. We'll have some tours of the Coast Guard cutter, harbor patrol boats, some additional free boat rides, and maritime education booths. So to wrap up, Waterfront hopes to see everyone come out and support our harbor and have a great time at the festival. Check the forecast today. It looks like it'll be 78 degrees and sunny on Saturday, so the weather is going to cooperate. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the commission for any questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Aldridge. Yeah, looking forward to the Seafood Festival. Commissioner Stedman, question.
Yes, thank you. Solid win on the 2.2 recovery of FEMA funds. I remember at one point when I asked you that question, you said, I don't know if we'll ever see those funds, right? So that's really great news. I do have a serious question about SAVE and the grant money there. In anticipation of the mandatory vessel insurance period that'll begin in January, correct? Have we anticipated a working number of vessels that just might be abandoned by people who can't comply with insurance? And this is based on anecdotal evidence I've collected from other harbors, let's say in the Seattle area, who've mandated insurance, and those guys have told me that the guys just walk away from their boats.
Yeah, Vice Chair Seven, thank you for the question. That's an excellent question. My assumption is that with the rollout of the vessel insurance requirement, we will see probably some boats that are at the end of their useful life be turned over or surrendered. It's not the waterfront's practice to accept a surrendered vessel that's in a slip with the expectation that someone will put a new boat in that slip. If they have the means to be able to afford a new boat, the expectation is they're going to pay for that disposal. So once again, in terms of slips and turnover, there's still value if someone wants to choose to either, sell the rights to that slip permit and get out of boating, sell the vessel. My assumption is the first year or two will probably have an increase in the amount of boats that are probably wanting to and looking to participate in this program. In terms of hard numbers, it's hard to tell. We don't know. We sort of speculated. Coming back to, I think, my presentation last year and a half ago or so about vessel insurance when we did a community survey, upwards of close to about 80% of the respondents self-reported that they did have vessel insurance or current slip permittees. Well, it's encouraging. But once again, it's hard to say. But we've been speaking about this internally, looking at sort of budget projections, knowing that, if and when it does come time for us to be able to remove some of these vessels from the public waterways, number one, that's what that grant money is for. And then number two, that it may be where we have to shoulder the burden of, disposing of these vessels that are surrendered. And once again, it's a lot environmentally safer, cleaner to do that, and cheaper to do that than to wait for them to, break loose and, go aground on the beach. Just this last week, Harbor Patrol officers, they rescued a boat that had broken loose before it went aground, so that's another great, no pun intended, save for them. And they'll continue to do so while we monitor that anchorage area as well. But in order to anchor more or get a slip in the harbor, as of January 1st in 2026, all vessels will be required to have insurance, and it's a good policy, and we're looking forward to what it'll do hopefully for the state of our harbor.
And one other follow-up question. I've been reading articles, one recently in the Independent, of boats washing up at Point Conception on hard-to-reach beaches because they're on native lands. Can you remind the public what the boundaries are of our jurisdiction?
Yeah, Vice Chair Seven, jurisdiction in terms of the harbor district, is that what your question is?
Yeah, I mean, boats that are washing up ashore.
Sure.
Are ones that are falling into our district, but they could fall outside of our district, and we
Yeah.
wouldn't be responsible to rescue those or deal with the abandonment of those vessels, correct?
That is correct. So our harbor patrol, regularly patrols the harbor district and outside of those waters. It's from up more sort of Henry's Beaches, or colloquially up sort of the west down to county line towards, where the cemetery is, close to where Butterfly Beach. For vessels in distress, or we have a report of a vessel that had been drifting that's outside of that, we will go out there and make a best effort to save that boat, weather and sort of safety permitting. That's a regular practice is what we do. For calls for service, for mutual aid for the Coast Guard, if it's staffing and it's practical for us to be able to go respond to a boat that is in distress, that's possibly taking in water or sinking up by, let's say, the airport or Goleta, we can do that if we do have harbor coverage with officers in the harbor as well. We wouldn't send all of our officers up there while leaving the harbor unprotected, because that's our priority. So that's on a sort of a case-by-case basis. But for events that are farther afield, up out in the marine protected areas, out the islands, up farther north, Naples, Gaviota, Hollister Ranch area, that is outside of our area. And the assets that would typically respond to that would be the small boat from the Coast Guard or a helicopter or the county sheriffs as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Nelson?
Do we have a map that shows the amount of what the harbor district is, as well as, I guess, the tidelands that were conveyed by the state? Because Merritt and I have talked a couple of times about how far does it extend? Does it go to the 3 mile line, or does it go to a mile? So, for example, are the cruise ships essentially within our district? I mean, just how big is the harbor district? I mean, you may patrol for, an area well outside the confines of the of Stearns Wharf in the harbor. Do you have any idea what the amount of water is? One of the things I'm thinking about is, obviously, you guys have been working on a project for kelp, a kelp farm with Bernard Friedman, and I'm just curious, will that farm potentially fall within the jurisdiction, the marine jurisdiction of the Harbor Commission and the Waterfront Department?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Nelson. So a couple different questions I'm hearing. One, I'll sort of maybe answer them sort of backwards and forwards. The Harbor District and all the city waters, we do have maps for that, and that's something we can distribute to you.
Great.
I can send it. It'd probably be easier
Great.
for you to
That'd
see
be great.
visually.
Yep.
Pictures worth 1,000 words,
Yep.
but it does extend several miles south of where the Harbor District is too. That kelp project, Mr. Friedman presented in a previous Harbor Commission meeting. I know Director Wilshire, if you would like to respond, sort of the specifics of that project. And I was part of the initial discussion too, but I don't want to speak out of turn.
Yeah, for the community kelp project, it's interesting because his permits will be with the state essentially.
Right.
And so there are some like overlapping jurisdictional lines, and we lease water space off the state to cover part of our mooring area,
Right.
which is much less than 3 miles out.
Right.
And so the state and the tidelands, the tidelands were granted from the state, and so we can look to those maps and overlay them, and Nathan and I will get together.
Yeah,
and
I'm just curious to
but-
see what it looks like, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that community kelp project would be in our response jurisdiction from
Right,
like a
right,
harbor
right.
patrol point of view, but from a permitting and decision-making process, maybe not.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. One question I have regarding the SAVE grant. These are for uninsured vessels only, right? Like if a boat washes up on shore on East Beach and they have insurance, they're the ones who are paying for the cleanup. Is that right? Is any SAVE grant money allocated to a situation like that?
Yeah, Chair Stanek and Commissioners, that's another excellent question. So in the situation that a boat would wash up aground and we have contact information, that the responsibility, regardless insurance or no insurance, is on the owner of record for that vessel. So they are responsible for that. Most insurance policies, all of them that I know, will cover for disposal cost in order to get that boat off the beach. We work with our local partners, Towboat US down in Ventura as well. They will come up and they'll respond as part with the insurance. And if a vessel owner does have insurance, which has happened in the past, and the boat has gone soft to ground, that process is very smooth and simple, and it works really, really well. If a boat is left on the beach, just once again, it's the responsibility of whatever owner of record to manage that disposal cost. We've been able to be much more aggressive in pursuing that and be able to remove that before it becomes an environmental disaster. If the person is not responsive, we've also issued citations for vessel abandonment in the Harbor's Navigation Code. So we've done everything we can environmentally, legally, and also so policy-wise to try to really, really minimize that situation from happening. But with all vessels in the entire Harbor District being subject to the insurance requirement in January, the hope is that we're going to really, really minimize these situations in general.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Also, too, regarding the surrendered vessel policy program, is there an estimate for how people have taken advantage of that, or how much participation we've had in that? Because I know that's generally a new program we've started, right?
Yeah, Chair Sandvik, another great question. For sort of the different questions you're asking, the SAFE program in general, the two pots of money that they end up reimbursing are either abandoned vessels or surrendered vessels. And so the typical process is when somebody comes to the waterfront and says, I have a boat, it's at the end of their useful life, I'm getting out of boating. Is there any option for me to be able to dispose of this properly? And so what we would have them do is fill out the sort of application form that's part of the Harbors and Navigation section. It's given to us by the state by Boating and Waterways, and they'd bring their title, their pink slip, and they effectively sign the title over to the city of Santa Barbara for purposes of disposal or abatement. And then we would request for them to remove all hazardous materials, fuel, batteries, anything else, and the holding tank from that boat. And then they turn it into us, and we do our best working with our vessel technician and harbor patrol crew to either take down the mast, scrub the hull, do everything can to make it sort of as clean as possible before it's hauled out and trucked out and disposed of.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to touch base, you might have been talking about our kind of internal turn-in program where we're offering $500 for people to voluntarily turn in that kind of collaboration with Heal the Ocean. I think there's been 2 or 3 or
Okay, so people have
few
taken
so
advantage
far,
of that.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, apologies, Chair Sandvik, to that end. Yes, we've had 3 successful vessel turn-ins in that program too, with that private-public partnership, which has been it's been great. It's been very encouraging.
Yeah, that is great. I'm glad that we have that option opposed to just leaving it out in Anchorage. So, okay, that's great news. Okay, any other questions from the commission regarding item number 7, the Harbor Operations Report? All right, other than that, I'm just looking forward to the Seafood Festival this Saturday. So, excited for that. Any staff communications?
None on the part of staff, Chair Stanwyck. Thank you.
Thank you. Any communications from the commission? Nope. Okay, the only communication I have is that we are interviewing for a vacant commissioner spot, and I know those are taking place this week at City Council. So just want to say, looking forward to having another commissioner on board for the full 7 for hopefully next meeting. So looking forward to that. All right, we've come to the end of the agenda. With that, we move on to adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.